The other day I saw Robin Greenfield give a foraging demonstration at Alton Baker Park in Eugene, Oregon. At the end, there's a pretty lengthy Q&A about some of his life choices and some of the history of how he got to be in the position he's in and some of his ideas and goals moving forward. I hope you enjoy.
The main way that people work with cleavers is eating it when it's young and tender in the springtime before it's like this. Or you can take a whole bunch of this and just boil it in water to make a nice brothy tea. And I can't tell you a lot about cleavers because I only need to know what I need to know in order to enjoy cleavers and have it be a wonderful part of my life. It's very sweet corny. Other people will say it's kind of like wheatgrass, like just a really strong, really nice, potent greeniness. I like to put this into salads. I like to eat it fresh. Probably that's my favorite way in the springtime is just to pick handfuls of it and just eat it fresh. You can eat the leaves, the stems, the seeds, all of it. Sometimes I see this as one of the early greens that pops up in the springtime. And this is on the later side for chickweed. However, it's growing in this shade of this tree so that soil is nice and moist here. And it's got the shade protecting, creating a microclimate. And so I would imagine that's why this chickweed is still around and it's young and tender. This is a plant that a lot of people, express hatred towards and, real animosity towards. And I don't feel any hatred for this plant. I feel love for this plant. And at the same time, I can want to do an ecosystem service and help to reduce the population of this plant. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about this concept of invasive. I don't call plants invasive because when we label a plant as invasive, we tend to have a negative connotation around it. There's hatred around it. But the reality is that most plants that are considered invasive, they are that way because humans took them from their natural habitat and introduced them to a new habitat. And in doing so, now they're growing in a way that does harm to the native ecosystem, often outcompeting the native plants. So I like to say that. It's a plant that was introduced from another ecosystem, and in being here, it does harm to the native ecosystem and to the native plants. Many of us have had raspberry leaf tea. You can also make tea from the leaves of any of the brambleberries. So right here in Alton Baker Park, we have unlimited supply of blackberry leaf tea. It's a very bitter tea, so if you're looking for a bitter tea, this is one of my primo ones. So helping with stimulating digestion that you peel off. And then you can munch on these. And sometimes they're really bitter, but sometimes not so much. They have a nice floralness to them. And it's kind of like rose to me, if you ever have like rose petals. We all are making our own personal decision about pesticide exposure. Some of us use it in our gardens and others of us don't. So the first thing is, when we start foraging, we start to ask, like, is this stuff sprayed? Yeah. My number one encouragement is we have to make sure we're applying the same level of diligence to what we're buying at the grocery store or getting at the restaurants. Because even if it's USDA organic, who runs the USDA? Whether it's the Trump administration right now, or the Biden administration, or the Obama, or the Clinton administration, it's actually a revolving door of corporations like Monsanto that go in there to control, to get what they want, not to serve the people. So USDA organic is not what you would hope that it would be. So that's first and foremost, questioning our food from the store just as much as we would question at the park. The next thing we do is we find out the areas that aren't sprayed and we start there if that's what we want to do. So that could mean starting in your own front yard and backyard if you're not spraying. It could mean talking to your neighbors. Maybe some of your friends have 10, 20 acres on the outside of town that has never been sprayed or hasn't recently been sprayed, and they'd be happy for you to forage there. Another place to start is organic farms. You can eat all of the weeds growing, the lamb's quarter and the sow thistle, and you can weed for them and they'll love it, and you get delicious and nutritious foods that you can forage. Or The edges of organic farms are often full of berries and herbs and greens outside of the area of cultivation. As far as the city parks go, what you want to do is you want to learn. Talk to the city, find out from the city what the practices are. If I had to guess, based on my experience and looking around this park, I would say they do very little spraying here in this park. Does anybody know what the practice of the city of Eugene is with the parks?
I thought it was like 15 feet from all pathways are being sprayed.
So you heard that maybe they don't spray within 15 feet of the pathways?
No, they do.
Oh, they
like,
do.
I know all along the Amazon path here they do. Yes, they do.
But you wouldn't have all of these flowers and, I'm not going to call them weeds, growing up out of this ground if they were spraying.
Yes and no. You can still have, so it sounds like yes, there are some pesticides that are grown or that are sprayed in this park. And so your job would be to learn about those practices, decide what you want to do, and if you don't want pesticides sprayed here, get involved with the city. That said, there is an incredible amount of biodiversity in this park. That's why I think that even though if they do spray, which I totally believe they do, it's not a blanket, it's not a blanketing of spray all over everything. And if they're spraying blackberries, it's not right now. During this growth season, it would be something that would be happening earlier because it doesn't make sense to be dousing this in chemicals right now. That's hugely ineffective. So then there's also the question of how long pesticides stick around. So those are some thoughts on that. We each get to make our own personal decisions around it. I personally feel very confident and comfortable eating food that's growing in the parks. This is called sow thistle. So this is a thistle, and all the thistles are edible. This one is the most, for me, of all the thistles, this one stands alone in its own group because it's not very pokey. It has a little bit of poke to it, but not very much. And this is commonly, like I said, in LA, people think this is dandelion because it has flowers that look like dandelion. But dandelion is only dandelion if it has one single stem with one single flower on it. One single hollow stem, which, I haven't seen a single dandelion flower in this park so far. Are we kind of beyond dandelion season here in Eugene? Yeah. But this has what look like dandelion flowers, very similar, but there'll be many flowers on here. And this is the group that we group together, the dandelion, thistle, and lettuce group. These are all in the Asteraceae family, which is one of the safest families of plants to work with that has minimal toxic plants and many edible plants. And the dandelion, thistle, and lettuce group, you don't have to be able to know whether it's a dandelion, thistle, or nettle because you can eat all of them. But you want to know because you'll work with them in different ways. One might have a more ideal root, the other might have more ideal leaves or flowers. Sow thistle in particular, the flavor of sow thistle is bitter, just like dandelion, so similar in that regard. And how I work with sow thistle is, I would say 80% of my sow thistle eating is just eating it just like that, eating the stem, eating the leaves, eating these flowers when they're younger.
Is the rest?
We're gonna raise our hands and wait till I've asked for questions.
Okay, sorry.
So, let's see. Okay, any questions about sow thistle?
Yes, are they the little new growth? Is that as bitter as the rest of them?
That tends to be less bitter. The newer growth, the younger tender growth tends to be less bitter. Wild lettuce tends to be more bitter, but I like to add wild lettuce to my salad bowls and munch on that as well. So, yeah, thank you, wild lettuce. Sometimes you can think this is purple dead nettle, but it's not. No. This is called self-heal or heal-all. Those are two common names. As you can imagine, with the name heal-all, this is a plant that's been worked with for a long time for its medicinal qualities and very much healing in it. I again don't remember the exact medicinal qualities. What I do is I make tea from this. There's about 50 different plants that I make tea from, and I just am consistently trying to drink herbal tea, especially in the winter, every day, generally morning and night. During the summer, a little bit less. Mint family. It has a square stem, so as I'm rotating, you can kind of tell that it's not this like smooth round rotation, it's more choppy. So this has a square stem and what are called opposite leaves. So this is a little bit of botanical knowledge. One of the common ways to identify is whether it has opposite leaves or alternate leaves. So this has alternate leaves. You have a leaf here, a leaf here, leaf here. They're not directly across from each other. This has opposite leaves. So the leaves are directly across from each other. So the mint family, all of the plants in the mint family have square stems and opposite leaves. So if you're out and about and you find a plant that has a square stem and an opposite square stem, opposite leaves, and is very minty smelling, you definitely have a mint. There's no question about that. If it has a very strong flavor or smell, then there's a good chance you have a mint, and it's something you can look into. You know, wild basil is in the mint family, for example. So it's something that you can explore. But also a lot of the wild mint plants are bitter and not particularly, desirable. But it's also another really safe family to work with. So another just a nice thing to know. Nice way to start to get to know the plants and be able to start to see some patterns. But we only eat a plant if we're 100% sure we know exactly what plant that is. In France, they call this Tilia more than basswood or linden. The genus of this is Tilia. I know the one in Wisconsin is Tilia cordata. Do you know what species we have here?
I know it's not native. I think this is from back east, so it's probably.
Yeah, probably. Might be the only species that we have in North America. But I am so happy to be here with basswood because there isn't basswood as far as I know in Southern California. I didn't see any in the Bay Area either. And this is one of my top plants. A lot of us at home, we take the time to grow kale, but this is basically a giant kale tree right here. We can eat all of the leaves of basswood. And you can eat the leaves of basswood at any time. However, when you want to really be eating basswood is when the leaves are young and tender, so the springtime. A lot of people like to harvest them when they're not even like fully unfurled yet, and they're still in like a bud stage. I do that, but more so, I guess I'm not usually around at that stage, so more so I'm eating them when they're in their full leaf, but when the leaves are in their young and tender stage. So at this stage, we are beyond the real young and tender stage. However, the most young and tender are going to be the ones on the tips, these new growth tips. You can see here that this has, you can kind of clearly see the difference in color here. So you have this dark green and this lighter green. This lighter green is the newer growth. And the lighter green tends to be more stretchy, a little more rubbery. It's also often like just a little bit more see-through as well. And so that's what you're looking for as far as the most tender leaves. These are edible. Basswood is edible at any time. It's just much more fibrous. And I would say at this stage, they're still fairly tender. I would still consider that to be desirable.
Are they as high in oxalates as kale?
Okay, I'll get to that question.
I'll look it up.
So, let's see. Okay, so yeah, some people, about 50% of their salad bowl will be basswood. So in the springtime, this can make up a very substantial portion of your salads and be one of your main greens. The other thing that people like to do with basswood is to dehydrate it and blend it into a powder, a green powder, and then you can use that all through the season when you don't have access to greens. You can add a spoonful into your smoothies or into your baked goods or into your soups and stews. So that's a way to eat a lot of this as well. And yeah, so that's a little bit about the basswood leaves. Now, basswood also provides in another way, and that is the flowers. So these are very easy to identify. They have this specialized leaf that looks, often it's compared to like a tongue. And so if you find a tree that has this seed formation with this, or flower formation that will become seeds later, with this specialized leaf structure, it's coming directly out there, you have basswood or linden. This has become one of my favorite teas. It's a nice, mild sedative, relaxing one. So this is one of my herbal sleepy time teas. With this I have pineapple weed and valerian. That's my main sleepy time tea that I take. And so you can make tea with this fresh, or you can dehydrate it and then make tea with it dehydrated. But the prime time to harvest this is once they are open and flowering and you smell them. And when you see the tree is covered in bees and they're foraging the nectar, that's when this is in its prime medicinal state to be harvesting it. You can harvest it at any time, but that's when you want to be harvesting it as far as getting the most medicine out of it. Plantago, well, actually we happen to stop in the narrowleaf plantago. This is a plant that has been featured on the front of Roundup bottles. It is a wonderful food and medicine. There is no such thing as a weed. That's a human-made concept. And most any plant that's labeled a weed in this society is actually beneficial to us in one. They're all beneficial to us in one way or another. Many of them are the best foods and medicines we have, available to us. We call them weeds. This is one of those plants. This is listed on some websites as the top 10 most medicinal plants on earth. I agree with along with another 10,000 or so plants that it would be up there in the top 10. And so this is one easy to identify one because, so this is the narrowleaf plantain. There's also the broadleaf plantain, and you can work with them in the same way. They have the leaves, the veins that run are deeply indented and coming out the back side, and when you break them apart, the veins often pull out. You can see that one vein there. Sometimes it's even more pronounced. Yeah, the veins will pull out of the leaves like that, so that's a good way to get to know plantago. Very common weed, one that you can add to your salads. You can cook it along with your other cooked greens. If you're making juice, you could juice plantago as well. One of the most common ways that it's worked is as a poultice. So if you're stung by a honeybee and you want to prevent it from swelling, you can chew up the leaves of plantago and stick that onto the sting, and a lot of herbalists say that it draws out the toxins. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I know that if I do that, within a couple minutes of being stung, I tend to swell way less. So in my experience, it works very, very well. It has the quality of astringency, so some plants are bitter, some are spicy, some are sour. This is astringent. And the way that you reduce astringency, if you want to eat a lot of this, is through cooking it. So most of my wild greens I cook. Probably 85% of all the wild greens that I eat are cooked. And a lot of wild greens are stronger in flavor, whether it's bitter or spicy or astringent. And by cooking them, you help to reduce that strong flavor, and it allows you to eat a whole lot more of it. So the main dish that I eat is called horta, which is Greek, and it means just a mess of wild greens sauteed in oil or fat. Historically, I believe they used animal fat. Today more olive oil. but you can cook in any fat plus a vinegar or an acid. So vinegar or lemon or lime and salt. So by cooking your greens with your fat and your acid, it makes it much more digestible and much more bioavailable. And that's how I eat about a pound of wild greens per day. If I tried to eat a pound of wild greens raw per day, I would not be the happiest camper. But by eating a pound of cooked wild greens per day, I'm very nourished and my digestion is very well. Just eat the whole top to bottom. I eat greens in many different ways. Steamed is my number one way right now. Yeah, or just putting it into soups with my wild rice and such. So we're actually going to meet 2 more plants, but this is just going to be a very short introduction because I just can't leave here without giving some love to the dandelion. So here we have dandelion. We know a lot. Most of us know of dandelion. And I'm just going to, dandelion is easily, we could do an hour-long class on dandelion. There's so much to know about dandelion. But I'm going to just give a little introduction and you can go deeper. There's plenty of people who teach about dandelion online and in books, etc. There's actually entire books dedicated to dandelion. So the entire dandelion is edible from the tips of the flower to the tips of the roots. And you can work with this in multiple dozens of different ways. So the flowers, my favorite thing to do is just to eat them raw, right off the plant in the springtime when they first start coming up. Especially, not having fresh greens in the winter time. It's just something that the body craves big time. But you can add those flowers to salads. You can dehydrate them and then make tea with them later. They're beautiful, dehydrated whole. These stems are edible at any point, but if you harvest them when they're more tender in the spring, some people actually will boil them and make dandelion noodles with them, which I have not done. So you can just eat those stems. The leaves, you can eat these raw as a salad green, you can cook them, you can juice them, you can eat them any way that you could possibly eat a green. Supposedly, the top half tends to be less bitter. So what some people do is they come along with a scissors, just like this, and they cut this top half. And that's what they eat it. That's what they eat. Again, cooking reduces the bitterness. And then lastly, the roots. You can dig up the roots. You can roast the dandelion root. It's called a coffee substitute, but it's its own thing. Prior to coffee, this was a very common drink in a lot of Western Europe. And as the globalized food distribution system happened, there was more of a loss of that. But it's one of my favorite drinks, is roasted dandelion root tea. And you just simply dig up the roots. I like to chop them up into chunks, but you can do them whole, put them into an oven, roast them at any temperature until they are crispy, and when you bend them, they just snap clean, so there's no moisture left in them. And then what I like to do is blend them up in a blender to turn it into, more like a coffee where it's like ground. And then you can boil it, or you can just percolate it, or you can just steep it, depending on how you want to work with it. And that's a really nice, people consider that a liver tonic, blood tonic, dozens of ways that dandelion tea has worked with medicinally. Very mild, something that, basically anybody can work with. So that's the dandelion. Incredibly special. Can be worked with in so many different ways. I just named, some of the main ways, but there's other numerous ways to work with dandelion as well. So I think I'm not going to do questions on the dandelion, and you can explore your relationship with the dandelion. And now we're going to meet one last plant, which we will be finding somewhere over here. Sitting so that way everybody's able to hear. Different flavors and colors and smells. By doing that, I know that I'm taking in what I need. That's my basic practice. I don't know what's in everything. Instead, I just take in a wide variety of foods and medicines in that way. But this very much represents my diet. So wild rice here has been my staple, and this is the last of my wild rice, so times are a-changing, because I'm going to hold on to this so I can keep sharing about the wild rice. So I'm basically done eating wild rice until about September 10th is probably when I'll have wild rice again. But this is one of my staples, and now I'm moving on to eating a lot more of my acorns, which I have the acorn flour. That's another one of my staple calories. As far as fat and protein, venison. So this is what some people call roadkill, and what I call a deer that was hit by a car. Because when we say roadkill, we tend to create this big othering. But when we say a deer that was hit by a car, it's a deer first and foremost. It was a deer when it was hit. It's a deer before, when, and after it was hit, first and foremost. So, and then I eat a lot of fish. This is smelt in particular, which is bait fish that grows in that I harvest in Lake Superior. And I was fortunate to harvest 100 pounds of smelt in one evening,
Wow.
which was very helpful for this West Coast tour because I'm eating a pound or two of smelt per day as I'm traveling. This is very much a staple food for me. And then here we have a big staple for me, which is fruit sauces. This is pear sauce. I eat a lot of applesauce and plum sauce. So this makes up a substantial amount of my calories, the fruit, and then a lot of my vitamins and nutrients as well. Stinging nettle is my top 10 edible greens. This is actually wood nettle, which is worked with interchangeably as stinging nettle. And this is very high in minerals, and I just add this into most of my cooked dishes, my wild rice, my soups. I just add some of this in. So right now I'm eating wild greens in really large quantities, so I haven't had to, I'm eating fresh wild greens in large quantities, so I haven't been eating as much of my dehydrated greens. This is especially for when I don't have fresh greens to be harvested. So here's maple syrup, and I find that as I'm walking around doing plant walks and putting lots of these plants in my mouth, sometimes a little maple syrup helps me. 40 gallons of maple sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. It's truly precious stuff. Like every drop of this is precious. Seaweed as one of my multivitamins. This is rockweed and bladderwrack, two of the really easy, common seaweeds that it took me 40 minutes to harvest a multiple year supply. This is the green powder that I was talking about before, and this is primarily basswood leaves right here, actually. Let me see. Yep. There's that mucilaginousness still exists in here. So this is, am I calling it correctly that this is what's used in filet to thicken up gumbo? Yeah, yep. Is that right? Okay. Basswood leaves?
Sassafras.
Sassafras. Okay.
But it's very similar.
Yeah, sassafras is worked with simile, and you can eat the leaves as well. Thank you. Brazilian pepper. I'm gonna pass this one around. This grows in Florida. And how many of you have had Brazilian pepper before? One. All right, a new food. A note, this is in the Anacardiaceae family of salt. So I harvest my salt from the ocean. I'm gonna keep her moving and not dive into the details. This is my spice mix. So wild onion and bee balm are two of my main spices that I work with. I do a lot of wild fermentation. This is fermented radish pods, wild radish pods from California. I haven't seen them growing up here, but this is a plant that's considered highly invasive in California, and I love harvesting the pods and lacto fermenting them. There's so many foods that you can lacto ferment. I eat a lot of mushrooms. These are chanterelles, one of the easiest beginner mushrooms to start working with. This is my taki powder, which is another type of mushroom. Just one note on this short one. This is Japan holly. This is the truly caffeinated plant of North America. It doesn't grow here in Oregon, but you can harvest this in from North Carolina down to Florida and over to Texas, the Gulf Coast states. And if you're looking for the most sustainable source of caffeine, this would be it. There's companies that are that wildcraft this in a totally sustainable way in Texas and in Florida, and you can purchase this online from them. And this, in my opinion, is the most sustainable way to drink a caffeinated drink here in Oregon.
Say the name of it again.
Japan holly, Y-A-U-P-O-N. And then lots of berries, so service berries, which are ripe right now. So if you're looking for a berry to harvest, I just harvested service berries today on the way over here. Elderberries, and then we have plum sauce, and this is autumn olive, a lot of herbal teas. And then what you don't see here are nuts. So I also eat a lot of nuts, black walnuts, hickory nuts, hazelnuts, pecans, chestnuts, acorns, and hickory nuts. So that's basically my diet. So any questions around foraging of any sorts?
Curious about you said you aren't getting quite enough fats, that you didn't bring any fats because they were in.
Because I ran out.
I'll give you some.
Yeah, I ran out, otherwise I'd have it. I actually have enough yellow bud hickory at home to make a gallon of oil from it, but I haven't had the time to make the oil from it. So I have exactly what I need sitting at home inside of nuts, and I haven't, my friend Sam Thayer has a press, but he's 2 hours away, so I haven't taken the time to go there. But when I get back, that's one of the first things I'm gonna do. So I will have a gallon of fat once I get back.
Where is home when you're not traveling?
I saw a hand over here.
Yeah, that makes me think about like preservation, like keeping foods fresh. Like, is that something you have to worry about or consider when you're storing things?
Preservation,
Like
yeah.
jellies and fats?
Preservation is absolutely key. So with each plant, you have to learn how to store the plant, store the abundance. A lot of people imagine me as just some goat who's out, eating each day. And I do a little goating, but the way to really make this work is to harvest the abundance when it's there. And so some of that's dehydrated, some of it's canned. You've got water bath canning, and you have pressure canning. I have a chest freezer at home, and I do a lot of freezing. I'm often using a refrigerator when I'm on the road. When I'm staying with people, I'll use the refrigerator. And also wild fermentation is a way of storing. Like these radish pods, if I left these just sitting out for 2-3 days, they'd be done. But I can put them in a jar full of salt water, and 4 years later, or 4 days later, they're gonna be even tastier. 4 days later, 4 weeks later, they're gonna be even tastier and more nutritious. So fermentation is absolutely part of, food preservation and processing is very much a part of it all.
Where do you harvest your wild rice?
I harvest my wild rice in my homeland in northern Wisconsin, in the lakes and the rivers and the flowages where it grows there. Wild rice grows in northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Ontario, and a little bit in Idaho as well. It's mostly been, lost from its native places, but I am so fortunate to be from the land of the wild rice.
And cranberries. Yes.
And what?
Cranberries?
Yep, there's cranberries where I'm from too. I haven't gotten into the cranberries. It's not something that I've done. Yeah?
What's your go-to favorite when you've got the munchies?
My go-to favorite with munchies, I don't really have a lot of munchies food, so I just have to eat a meal, basically.
Maple syrup.
I only have so much maple syrup. So, yeah, I don't have a munchies. I don't have a lot of like super snacky food. Yeah.
Just wondering what you do for carbohydrates. Like, do you dig up camas roots? Or
Carbohydrates are primarily wild rice. This is my, this is my carb source, and then acorns are my secondary one. And that's 90. Oh, and then in Florida, wild yam.